Hi. So today's video is going to be all about photosynthesis. And photosynthesis is one of these really amazing chemical reactions that happens in nature. And life on our planet would not exist if it weren't for photosynthesis. And so the title of our notes today is going to be photosynthesis. And you should know that all plants can do photosynthesis. Okay, so all plants are capable of doing photosynthesis. Okay, and like I said, it is the most important reaction of our life. There are a few bacteria called cyanobacteria that are also able to do this. There are a few species of bacteria, for example, cyanobacteria, that are also capable of doing this, of doing photosynthesis. Okay, so, but I am going to focus on the plants. And so how I'm going to start is I'm going to draw a plant. Okay, so here we have a plant, and plants have leaves on them. And so photosynthesis takes place on the leaves. Okay, so here are my leaves. And in a leaf, and then, okay, so, and then we have a ground. Okay, and then we have roots underground. So here's our plant. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to zoom into one of the leaves. Okay, so here's our leaf, and leaves have what we call veins. And this is a vascular system, just like we have a vascular system that circulates blood throughout the body. For us, it takes oxygen and nutrients throughout all our cells. For the plant, it takes gases, which are oxygen and carbon dioxide, and nutrients all over the body of the plant. So it's similar. And so the leaf, like in the whole plant, is made up of cells. And so I am going to just draw a little cell here. And remember, the whole body of the plant is made of cells. And I am going to zoom into this cell. Okay, so this is like my zoom in box. And I'm going to make a cell here. Okay, so this is a plant cell. So let me label that. And so plant cells are usually this rectangular shape. And that is because they have what we call a cell wall. So this outer part here is called a cell wall, and it gives it its shape. Inside the cell wall, we have a plasma membrane, okay, because all cells have a plasma membrane. And a plasma membrane is the main part, is the main membrane, like the skin of the cell. So that's what that is. And then inside the cell, we have what all cells have. And that is like a nucleus, and we've got different organelles inside, like we have an ER. That's what this is. And then there's Golgi, and then ribosomes, and just all the things that a cell has. It has a mitochondria. That's what this is. And the plant cell has things that other animal cells do not have, which allow it to do photosynthesis. And that is an organelle that specializes in photosynthesis, which is called a chloroplast. And that's what that is. So I am going to blow that up so we can look at that. So this is a chloroplast. Okay. And so I'm going to blow that up and we're going to look inside that. Okay, and we're going to draw it green because chloroplasts have a pigment that is called chlorophyll that is green. So that is why all plants are green. And that is why only the green parts of a plant can do photosynthesis. And so this is our chloroplast. Okay, and so some features of a chloroplast inside of a plant cell is that a chloroplast has two membranes. So I'm going to draw two lines here. There's an outer membrane, and now I'm drawing the inner membrane. Okay, and that is a phospholipid bilayer like all membranes are. And so basically it has 4 layers of phospholipids. So I'm going to say this is the outer membrane here. Oops. Outer membrane. And this is the inner membrane. Okay, and inside the chloroplast, we have these things that are like discs, and these are called thylakoids. And they are these flattened discs that are stacked up on top of each other. And the whole inside of the chloroplast is filled with these stacks of discs or stacks of thylakoids. So each one disc is called a thylakoid. So I'm going to label that. And a whole stack of thylakoids is what we call a grana. Okay, so thylakoid is one disc, grana is a stack of thylakoids. And the whole inside of the chloroplast has all these thylakoids, and they're actually all connected to each other. And so just imagine the whole chloroplast is filled with these thylakoids, okay? And the last thing that I want to point out is that there is some liquid inside the chloroplast, and that liquid has a special name, and it's called stroma. Okay, so stroma is the liquid. Put that in parentheses here. Liquid inside. Okay, it's called stroma, has a special name. So that's what a thylakoid looks like. And so photosynthesis occurs inside the chloroplast. Let's write that down. Occurs inside the chloroplast. Okay? And photosynthesis can be broken down into 2 steps. Step 1 is called the light reactions. And the light reactions occur in the thylakoid membrane. Okay, so the thylakoids are these little discs. There are proteins embedded in the thylakoid membrane, and these proteins are the ones that are doing the light reactions of photosynthesis. So light reactions occur inside the membrane of a thylakoid. Okay, and we're going to draw a picture and we're going to go through all those steps. Step 2 is called the Calvin cycle. Sometimes this step is called the dark reactions, but I don't like that name because the Calvin cycle can happen in the daytime. And so when you say dark reactions, sometimes students think that maybe it's at night, but it's not. It happens during the day. So we're just going to call it the Calvin cycle because it's named after the scientist who figured it out. And the Calvin cycle occurs in the stroma of the chloroplast. And the stroma, remember, is the liquid inside the chloroplast. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go through the details of these different steps. Okay, so there's 2 steps. And there are some details. We're going to talk about some integral membranes that are going through the membrane of the thylakoid. And then we're going to talk about what's happening with the molecules. Okay, so let's start with step 1 of photosynthesis. Okay, I'm going to change colors here. Step 1, these are called the light reactions. Okay, and they're called the light reactions because this is where the sunlight actually is harvested and used. The energy from the sun is used to drive these reactions. And so let me see. What I'm going to do is I am going to draw a membrane of a thylakoid. So I'm going to draw right here. This is a thylakoid. Okay, it's a disc. Okay, and these thylakoids are stacked up inside the chloroplast. And then I'm going to zoom in to the membrane of this thylakoid. So I'm going to say right here, oops, I'm going to zoom in. So let me see. Okay, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to draw a little box. Okay, so here's a little box. Whoops, I didn't want an arrow. Okay, there's one line of the box, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so there's the box. I'm going to enlarge that box so we can see what's going on. So what we're going to see is this thylakoid membrane that's going across the middle of the box. That's what we're going to see. Okay, so I'm going to make this box a lot larger. Okay, so that's what this box is here. I'm just going to make like, this is what this is. Okay, it's like a zoom in box. We're zooming into the membrane of the thylakoid. So see this line that goes through? What that is the membrane. And if you remember, membranes are made of phospholipids, and membranes are always made of 2 layers of phospholipids. So I'm going to draw the phospholipids as black. And if you remember, phospholipids have a glycerol head, which loves the water. Okay, so we're drawing the phospholipid heads, and they love the water. And then if you remember, phospholipids also have these 2 tails, okay, and they're unsaturated, which means that they're like poking around and kicking each other. Okay, so I wish I could copy and paste this. Sorry, bear with me here while I draw all these phospholipid heads. So these are the glycerol heads. They're polar, they're hydrophilic, and so what we're looking at is the membrane right here, okay? And on the inside, we have these fatty acid tails, and each phospholipid has 2 fatty acid tails. Okay, this is going to take kind of a little while. Oops. So there's 2 tails per phospholipid. Okay, bear with me here. And I want you to remember that these tails each are a long string of carbons and hydrogens, and that they're zigzaggy. They're not straight like this. I'm just drawing them straight just to save time from our drawing. Okay, so here's our phospholipid bilayer. Okay, and so there are proteins that are embedded all the way through the membrane. And this first one that I'm going to draw is called a photosystem. Okay, so I'm going to draw this big, large protein. And I want you to realize that this protein is made up of lots of proteins. Okay, so this one right here is called photosystem 2. Okay, it's called photosystem 2, and it's made up of many proteins. And we call it a system because all these proteins are working together. Okay, so that's what that looks like. I'm going to put another one here. This is called photosystem 1. Okay, so I'm going to put another one here. This one's called photosystem 1. And so I want to point out that these light reactions are going from left to right. And so they're going to go through photosystem 2 first and then photosystem 1 second. And the reason they're numbered backwards is because photosystem 1 was discovered first. And so they called it photosystem 1. And then later they found out photosystem 2 was in front of it and came before it, but it was too late. They already named it photosystem 1. So then they had to name the second one photosystem 2, but actually photosystem 2 goes first. Okay, then I'm going to put another protein in here, and it's going to go right here. It goes in between. Okay, it's a smaller one, and then I'm going to put kind of a bigger one here. Let me make that a little bit more round. Okay. So this one is called plastoquinone. Actually, I'm going to put it right here. Hang on. This one is called plastoquinone. And then this one is called cytochrome B6F. I know these names are just kind of crazy. So this one is called cytochrome B6F. Okay. And so all you have to know right now is that there are these embedded proteins that go all the way through the membrane of the thylakoid. And so here's our thylakoid up here. There's a whole bunch of thylakoids in the chloroplast. And inside the membrane, you have these proteins that are embedded. And so far I've drawn 4 proteins. Okay. There are more than just these, but I just don't want to overwhelm you with too many. But I do have to add this last one. And this one is very important. And so I'm going to draw it like this. It looks like this. And this one is a big protein, and it's actually an enzyme, and it's a very important enzyme. And it goes all the way through the membrane. It looks like that. Okay. This one is called ATP synthase. Oops, hold on. ATP synthase. Okay, and it's a very important one. Okay, so now we can get into our story. Okay, actually, there's one more. There's one more I need to add, and it's down here. And this one is called the oxygen evolving complex. I'm going to put it goes down here underneath photosystem 1. Hang on here. I need an arrow. That's not an arrow. There we go. Okay, this is called the oxygen evolving complex. Okay, so now we have all our players, and now we're going to get into the story. So the first thing that happens, there's several things that are happening at the same time, okay? And this is very complex, and it's just really cool to see what happens and how photosynthesis takes place. But what happens is we have the sunlight, okay? So here's the sunlight. I'm going to just put like a lightning bolt, but really it's a photon, and the photon is hitting the photosystems. Okay, so I'm going to write that here. Okay, so I'm going to write the story out. Sunlight hits the photosystem 1. I'm sorry, photosystem 2. Okay, and what happens is inside photosystem 2, there are all these pigments called chlorophyll. So inside photosystem 2, there are many chlorophylls. Okay, and these chlorophylls, they are a green pigment, okay, which is again why all plants look green, because they are reflecting a green color and they're absorbing all the other colors. Oops, and I misspelled chlorophyll. And so within these chlorophylls, what happens is there's some energy that gets taken from that sunlight photon, and it gets transferred from one chlorophyll to another chlorophyll to another chlorophyll. Okay, so I'm going to write that. And that's called resonance energy. So energy gets transferred from one chlorophyll to the next. This is called resonance energy. Okay, and it just means that there's some vibration happening, and one chlorophyll gets all wiggly with energy and it transfers it to the next one, and then that one gets wiggly with energy, transfers it to the next one. So it's like a funnel, and this energy is being funneled down to the bottom. At the very bottom of this photosystem 2, we have a let's see, it's hard to see, but I'm drawing two little black dots here. And these two little black dots are electrons. Okay, so I'm going to write this down here. At the bottom of photosystem 2, there are two chlorophylls with electrons. I'm going to say there's two chlorophylls with electrons, okay? And these two chlorophyll are called the special pair. These two are called, they have a special name. They're called the special pair. And what happens is in these two chlorophylls that are the special pair, they get so wiggly and full of energy that the electron pops off. Okay, one of the electrons pops off. Okay, so these two are called special pair. They get so much energy that has been funneled down the photosystem 2 that one of the electrons actually comes off. Okay, they get so much energy that one of the electrons pops off. Okay, it's like it just bounces off. And this electron then bounces to the plastoquinone. Okay, so this electron then goes to the plastoquinone here. Okay, and I'm just going to draw those circles. So that's our electron now. I'm going to write that in the story. Okay, the electron goes to the plastoquinone. Okay, and the plastoquinone is just there to accept this electron. That's the job of the plastoquinone. Then that electron still has a lot of energy, and then it bounces to the cytochrome B6F. Okay, so then it goes here. And that's the job of the cytochrome B6F, is to take the electron. Okay? Okay, so then the electron then bounces off that, and it goes to the photosystem 1. Okay? And then there is another protein up here. I forgot to draw it. I'm so sorry. And it's up here. And it's called ferredoxin. Let me write that down here. Ferredoxin. And so that electron has jumped from the photosystem 2 to the plastoquinone to the cytochrome B6F to photosystem 1. And then there's more sunlight energy that's being funneled down. So it gets even more energy. And then that electron then finally jumps to the ferredoxin F. I'm sorry, ferredoxin. Okay, so that's where the electron ends up. Okay, so let me write this down. The electron goes to the plastoquinone. Then it jumps to the cytochrome B6F. B6F, then to the photosystem 1, which has more sun energy, Then it finally jumps to the ferredoxin. Okay. And so the ferredoxin is on the outside of the thylakoid. And I want to point out that down here underneath, this is the inside of the thylakoid. So I'm going to say inside of the thylakoid. Okay. And then out here is the stroma. So that's outside of the thylakoid. So I'm going to put stroma out here. Okay. And so out here we have this ferredoxin. And what the ferredoxin does is it reduces this very special molecule. Okay. So I'm going to write this down. Ferredoxin reduces a NADP into an NADPH. Okay. And so I'm going to write that right here. So ferredoxin is then going to make an NADP. Oops. Hang on. NADP turns into an NADPH. Okay. And so this NADPH is one of the outcomes of the light reactions for photosynthesis. Okay. So this is one of the outputs. This is an energy rich molecule. That hydrogen that was added has a lot of energy, and that's going to be used in the second step of photosynthesis. But one of the outcomes of the light reactions is NADPH, and the only way that ferredoxin can make that is by all the energy that was added by this electron jumping from one protein to another protein. Okay, so that's one thing that happens in this in the light reactions. Okay, the other thing that's going to happen is that this oxygen evolving complex, what it does is it's going to break apart water. Okay, so I'm going to put here H2O. Okay, let me make that a different color. I'm going to make it blue. H2O gets split apart, okay, in this oxygen evolving complex. Okay, and it turns into H's, so those are called protons. Plus we have oxygen, which is O2, plus we have electrons, which is E negative, okay? So the water gets broken up in this oxygen evolving complex. I'm going to write that down over here at the bottom. Okay, I'm going to scoot up a little so we can see what's happening. Let me back up. And I'm going to write it here. So the oxygen evolving complex is breaking apart water. And this is really remarkable. Water is a very, very stable molecule, and it is very, very hard to rip apart. But the oxygen evolving complex does that. Okay. And so what happens is the water gets split up into three parts. So the water is broken down into three parts. Okay. The first part is that we have hydrogens. And so what happens is these hydrogens from the water then start to build up inside the thylakoid. Okay, so I'm going to say hydrogens build up inside the thylakoid. Okay. The second thing is that we have oxygen ripped out of the water. So oxygen is made and it goes into the atmosphere. Okay. And that's oxygen that we're like breathing in right now. So it comes from water from the plants. So the plants take the water, takes the oxygen out of the water, puts it back in the atmosphere. Okay. And then the last thing is that electrons are taken off. Electrons are used to replace the special pair. So this electron is then going to go back to here so that this electron can be replaced. Because remember, it jumped up all the way up to here to ferredoxin to make the NADPH. So this electron goes here. Okay, I'm going to draw this in pink. This electron goes here. The oxygen goes to the air. And then these hydrogens are going to go over here. Okay, they're just going to build up inside the thylakoid. And so I'm going to draw H's here. So there's going to be a lot of H's. Okay, and what's going to happen is we have so many H's inside that there's going to be this massive buildup of H's. And through the properties of simple diffusion, passive diffusion, means that when there are too many ions all crowded up, they want to spread apart. Okay, so inside we're building this high concentration of hydrogens. And so what ends up happening is these hydrogens are going to passively diffuse through this ATP synthase. Okay, so this ATP synthase is like a big straw. And as a hydrogen passively diffuses through ATP synthase is going to make a molecule called ATP. Okay, so I'm going to write that down. Okay, hydrogens build up a high concentration and start to passively diffuse through ATP synthase. When that happens, ATP is made. Okay, so this ATP synthase is an enzyme that makes ATP. And the only way it works is when a hydrogen passively diffuses through it. So then as a result, we're going to get ATP made. Okay, and so this is our second outcome of the light reactions for photosynthesis. Okay, so over here I said NADPH was one outcome. The second one is ATP. And ATP is another energy-rich molecule. So the whole point of the light reactions is to make NADPH and to make ATP. And while we're doing that, we are also releasing oxygen into the air. Okay, so that is the light reactions of photosynthesis. So now what we have to go into the Calvin cycle is we have NADPH and ATP. So we're going to move into the next step. Okay. Oops, I didn't mean to move that. Okay. Okay, so step 2 of photosynthesis. Hang on, let me just see. Let me make sure. Okay. Step 1 is light reaction. Step 2, Calvin cycle. Okay, so what we have right now from the light reactions is we have NADPH and ATP, both energy-rich molecules that are going to be used to drive the Calvin cycle. The energy that was used to drive the light reaction cycles is the sunlight, okay? And that's why they're called light reactions. And so now we have NADPH and ATP to drive this Calvin cycle. And this Calvin cycle happens in the stroma of the chloroplast. Okay. Okay, so the way that I'm going to draw this is in a circle. Okay, so what we have is we're going to start with carbon dioxide. Oops. Okay, we have carbon dioxide, and the carbon dioxide comes from the atmosphere. Okay, so I'm going to write that down in our notes, actually. Okay. Carbon dioxide comes from the atmosphere. Okay, and it enters the plant through pores in the leaf called stomata. Okay, and these pores in the leaf called stomata, they're like little mouths. Okay, it's like the plant actually has a mouth. I'm going to show you a picture. And so these mouths, they open and close based on whether they need to like release gas or accept some gas. Stomata. Okay, so here's what the stomata look like. And these are in the leaf. They're on the underside of the leaf. They're not on the top because otherwise there'd be too much evaporation and the plant would lose too much water. But it's on the bottom of the leaf and they open and close. They allow carbon dioxide in and they release oxygen. So the oxygen that was made in the light reactions with the oxygen evolving complex, that is released through this little mouth of the plant. Okay, so the carbon dioxide is coming in through the stomata. And what it's going to do is it's going to bind to an enzyme with another chemical. And the other chemical is called RUBP. So RUBP is the name of this other chemical. Those two molecules are going to bind to an enzyme called rubisco. Let me write it. Rubisco is an enzyme. Okay, I'm going to have to write that. Rubisco is an enzyme. Okay, and this enzyme is going to take the carbon dioxide, which is a gas, and it's going to fix the carbon dioxide with the RUBP to make a new molecule. And this new molecule is going to be a molecule that has 6 carbons. Okay, so let me just write this. RUBP has 5 carbons. I'm going to draw carbons like this. I'm going to make them orange. I'm going to make them pink. I'm going to make them pink. Okay, so RUBP has 5 carbons. Okay, I'm going to draw all my carbons as pink circles. Okay, and carbon dioxide has 1 carbon. See, there's just 1 C here. So rubisco is an enzyme. I'm going to put enzyme here. Enzyme. And it's a big protein that's going to grab the carbon dioxide and grab the RUBP and stick them together. And it's going to make this bigger molecule that now has 6 carbons. Okay. And so I want to point out also that we have to have 3 carbon dioxides. Okay. I'm going to put some numbers here so that we have a balanced equation in the end. So we have 3 carbon dioxides and we have 3 RUBPs. Okay. Then these 3 RUBPs and 3 carbon dioxide gets put together to make this long molecule of 6 carbons. And there are going to be 3 of these. Okay. Then this long molecule gets ripped in half, and then we're going to have a new molecule called PGA. Okay, you don't have to remember these names. I'm just putting them here just so you kind of have a clue. So we're going to have 6 PGAs, which is going to be 6 3-carbon molecules. Okay. So we had 3 of these 6 carbon molecules. They got broken in half. So now we've got 6 of these 3 carbon molecules. Okay, and then what we're going to do is we have 6 of these. Then they're all going to be transferred into making what is called G3P. Okay, and G3P is very important because G3P is what we can use to make glucose. So I'm going to put an arrow here, and we're going to have 6 G3Ps. 6 G3P. Okay, and I'm going to draw, and this is also a 3-carbon molecule. Okay, and then one of these G3Ps is going to be used to go make glucose. Hang on. Okay, and glucose is the whole point of photosynthesis. Okay, so only one of these G3Ps makes glucose, and then 5 of these G3Ps goes on to make 3 RUBPs. Okay, so I'm going to put 5 G3Ps go here, and 1 G3P goes here. So 1 G3P goes to make glucose, 5 of them go on to make 3 RUBPs. Okay, and then we start over, and that's why it's called a Calvin cycle, because now we have RUBPs, which then binds with carbon dioxide from the atmosphere by rubisco to then make 3 of these, which makes these PGAs, which just make the G3Ps, and it goes over and over and over. And that's the end. And the whole point, oh, and here's the thing. This is what I need to add. The NADPH and ATP are used to drive this circle. Okay, I need to write that. Okay, so the energy to drive this cycle is done by NADPH and ATP. Okay, and so that gets used up to do this. And then in the end, we have glucose. Okay, so that's it. That's the photosynthesis. It's crazy and awesome. And I will see you guys next time.